Hello friends, thanks for joining me in today's lecture. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about the next topic, the S3. And if you try to recall that we got some issue in the last lecture, and I promise that I'll continue from the same place. So in today's lecture, what we will learn? We will learn about how we can create a bucket to host our static sites, how we can have the replications, how can we enable the versioning, and many more things. So stay tuned with me. If you're new to my channel, you're most welcome. I would request everyone, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do subscribe to my channel. Do like, share your views and comments so it motivates me to create, more videos for you. So without wasting too much time, let's get started. So in the previous lecture, we have seen that we got some issue while we were running this script to create a logging bucket, but somehow we got this kind of error. What we'll do is we will continue from the same point. We will try to create the bucket and we will try to see whether it's putting some logs over there or not. So what I'll do is I'll just start a new plan and we'll wait for it to get finished and we'll see what is happening. So my plan has started. Now I got the dependency graph here that one bucket has to be changed this bucket, because if you look at the screen, we created this bucket and we created this is our primary bucket where we will host our application, we will deploy our static files, we will keep it is kind of a storage for us, and this is a logging bucket where we will try to store the logs to for the access logs and servers access log, all those things. It's a kind of a secondary bucket which is just for the debugging purpose. So that got created into the previous execution. So now it's telling you are just linking the primary with the secondary one. So in order to do that, I have to confirm and apply. So I'll do that, confirm the plan, and it will start doing it. My execution is completed now. I got this one, the code arc access log and the code arc wake. The web is one is the primary one and the access log is the secondary one. So two things to remember here. This is our script to create the log bucket, and this is our script to create the primary bucket. In the primary bucket, we have given the name using variable, input variable. We have defined some tags. We have given the access control list is like as a public read. And in log bucket, I have given the ACL log delivery right because this is needed. Once, if by default, if you don't give it, it's becomes a private. So what happens, I've given that access. One of my bucket is going to deliver some log related activity, so I'm giving you the permission to deliver it right with the right access. To start with the website hosting, we need certain setup required here. The first one we have already completed, which is means we have given this bucket as a public read, so anybody can read it. So this is publicly read access. This bucket is having publicly read access. Now we need to go ahead and we need to make some more changes so our bucket can start having the uh, so in order to start with the website hosting, we need to recall our discussion in the previous lecture. So we had seen it like if you want to do some activity or make it your bucket as a static hosting website server, then you have to provide some access control, and that is like bucket policy and access control lists. So we have completed the access control list part. We have already given as a public read, but now we have to give the bucket policy as well. So what we can do, there's a two way to do it. First, we can use the resource block to create a policy for the S3 bucket. Another one is using a data block that we will see into the next one. So first we will go with the resource block and we'll try it. So we will say resource, the block, the method name you are going to use the AWS S3 bucket policy, and I'm going to name it as this as my pet name. Here I have to give the bucket ID actually. So for me this is primary bucket, so I'll give the ID now. And I'm going to use the inbuilt function called JSON encode. And the advantage of using JSON encode is, let's say I'll have some dynamic values, so this expression will be converted into a valid JSON string, you know. So the main part is like here we have to define some information. So this is the structure how it looks like. We have a version where we have to give the version name of the JSON schema. The ID, you can have any friendly name just to identify what kind of a JSON schema it is about. And the main important part is the statement. This statement is basically the instruction about, uh, your bucket. It's about your, access control and everything. So in the statement, it basically you can have a multiple statement together, or you can have a single as well. So here what I am trying to say is, this is my statement ID. You can keep it blank, or if you want to give it your name, then you can give it a name. There's a effect. The effect is like what will happen if this document or this policy will be applied. So what should happen? So what it means is, to make it more clear, if I apply this rule, then what should it behave like? It should either allow or it should deny. So effect basically have two values, allow or deny. And principal is something, it is about who is going to access it. Is it something within AWS, or is it AWS services, or it's something else? So the principal is something, the person or the consumer, is talking about the consumer or the person, or the consumer can be itself a AWS service or the outside world. Okay, so action is like, it's uh, you know the activity we are going to perform. For example, if I say, hey, this is my bucket, and this bucket is gonna to be accessed by all the end user, and they can only access this piece. For example, they can access or they can read the site, but they cannot write anything. So what we are saying here is, we are restricting their access to certain activity. And the resource, as you know, the resource itself is the set of block, or the, or you can say the bucket, where we want to perform this activity. For example, in my case, this is my bucket. So what I'll do is, this bucket is going to have a bucket policy, where I would say this bucket can be accessed by outer world, and with certain limit they can access it, or they can, if the user belongs to some region or maybe some geographic region, they can not access it. So this is basically, we are going to tell them the specific way of dealing with this bucket resources. Since it is going to be S3 static hosting, then we need to make sure that our website are publicly accessible, only read only. So we have to say, this is read only access. Maybe you can have anything if you want. I'm going to say it's allow. Principal, I don't know who is going to access it. Maybe it's AWS services or maybe the outer world. So I have said star, anybody can do it, anything. And the action is only to going to perform is uh, get object. So this is a method specified in S3 resource, or maybe S3 service, I would say. They can only get the object. If anybody outer world is trying to access my bucket, they can only access the object. So what kind of object, from where they can access it? So we need to give them the resource, the actually the source path of the bucket. So what I'll do is, I'll say they can either access it using this one, this ARN, or they can access the resources within it. The resources within it means they can access the objects inside it. So let's quickly go over. What does it mean is, my bucket, this bucket Kodak web, is having public read access on the bucket label. On the object and bucket inside, they can access the object. So it means they can see our website, they can visit our website. and the principal is anybody because it starts so anybody can access this site. So in the similar line, what we can do is eventually this is public read, but if you want to do any kind of a deny, then probably what you need to do is uh, deny only access, and you have to say deny, and you can have the name of any person, any user, or any specific service that you have to block. Then you can say deny the principal. We're going to talk about, we are not sure, s3, so we'll say s3 put object on this one. When some condition, if you want to apply condition, not IP address, or maybe some condition like AWS source IP is equal to this CIDR block, something like this. So for our case, this is not needed. I'm just trying to showcase here how you can add the multiple statement here. So for this is one, we are good. We will have this one, a specific one. So what we have said, this is my logging bucket. My all the logs will be stored here in this log. I have already improved, added the bucket policy. So this is the bucket policy, and I'll show you something on the AWS console as well, so you can have a better picture. So as of now, if you look at here, the bucket policy on the site on the AWS console is completely empty. It doesn't have any bucket label, JSON information. So what I'll do is when we run this script, then all the information will be applied here. Okay. So this is one way, and the another one way is you guys are aware of having the core setup. So this is having about the policy. Now we are moving towards having the static website. So in order to get the static website turned, what we need to do is we need to make sure our websites are following the policy and everything. So what we can do is we can have a course rule, okay, and another one is website section. I'm going to talk about it. So whenever you deploy any website, you make sure that your website either dealing with the success case or failure case. The success case means 200. Whenever someone hits your URL, then if the resources exist, it will return back to the user. If doesn't exist, then what should happen? So we are going to have a two kind of definition here. Probably we'll say if the resources, if they directly visit our website, then my index.document, my first entry point would be index.html. If any resource does not exist, then we need to show them a custom error or something like that. Along with this one, there's a option that you can do is the routing part. So we will think about its routing part later because that's not a concern as of now. So what we will do is we will have these two information. So just to give you idea, the routing information can be very useful when you are dealing with the multiple set of instruction. Let's say you are building a website or a static website where you have a CSS, images, JS kind of information, or maybe documents. If you are having the only single endpoint and you want to deal, or you want to route to the different bucket, or you want to route to different folder, in that case uh, you can use the routing rules as well. So we will see it whenever we are going to deal with the CDN. Then we will come back here and we will add the condition for the routing rules, and we'll see how it works in the actual scenario. So now the terms here is our the static website here. So what we will do is we're going to add the first course rule. So course rule is allowed headers, as it is a read only, so we can have allowed header is no, this is not the header actually, so we will add the allowed origins, and we will say it as a headers. Allowed header is a star. Allowed method could be it is a read only, so we can have a get and head call only. And allowed origin is going to be anything. If you want to have a you know any specific site or any specific origin to access this one, so you can have this one as well, like https or abc.com, something like that. or maybe you can have a star.abc.com, something like this. So for me, in my case, we are not sure who's going to access it, so we'll have everyone can access it. Expose header I'm going to have is the e tag, and the caching I'm going to allow it is to 3 seconds only, or maybe you can increase as per your requirement. So I have set up the CORS rule, I have set up the S3 bucket policy. This is one way to do it. Another way to do it is, this bucket policy. So what I'm going to do is uh, rule 1 to define the bucket policy. I'll just reformat a bit and then we'll push it to the version, to the git. This plan has been started here, as we have seen into the previous lecture. We have set up git webhook and everything, so now it's happening. So this is complaining about a string required. The reason here is we have said JSON decode. Actually it should be JSON decode because we are going to have a JSON schema over there. We are not decoding any string, so we need to make it sure that it is JSON encode. And let's make a change there and repost it. So now the plan execution is done. I need to confirm and apply, and once it is done we will have the policy schema over there. So it is completed now. We'll go back here and we will try to reload it. Now if you look at the bucket policy section, what we have here is we have all the information here, whatever we have defined there, and it is saying the same thing, but that was a dynamic one. Now it's have. So your bucket is having the read-only access for the objects as well, and that can be done. That this policy will be applied on the bucket that we have said here, like code of wave and its resources, and anybody can use it. And the similar line, if you look at this, everyone is having the public access, and the CORS rule is allowed header is star, allowed method is getted, and origin and expose header, right? And now we could need to go to the properties section, and this is our static website hosting. So if I'll click here, so this is saying 404 not found because neither we have a index.html nor we have a error.html. So this is how our static website hosting is done using S3. So there are few things to remember, but this is not I'm not going to cover this thing into this chapter because that is a part of security. And whenever we will start with the cloud front and the Lambda, then we will see how we can make sure our static website are secure and only accessible through the grantee, the authorized person. Let's move on to the next section, which is about the versioning. So we'll see how we can enable the versioning things. To enable a version, but before moving on to the version section, what we will do is we are going to replace this one using data block. So what I'll do is I'll create a rule 2, basically rule 2 of policy document, and I would say data IAM policy document. I would say this, and the similar statement I'm going to say this policy statement will have a statement, and a statement will contain certain information like effect, which will have the value allow. Resources is going to be uh, you know bucket dot this dot arn, and similar way for the another one we have done it, like we will say AWS S3 bucket dot this dot ARN for its children, and the action we can perform on this policy is going to be S3 get object, and the principal is going to be identifiers. What kind of identifiers? So as of now I don't know, so I would say it's star, and the type is going to be AWS because it's a AWS related thing. So there's a type. So, and here I need to say, what I'll do is I'll comment it out this part so later we can reuse it. I will say policy is equal to data policy this. So this is going to be this dot JSON. Okay, so we need to look at this part again. So as of now, if you look at here, we are not sure what type of type. When we say type, so there could be four type: AWS, canonical user, federated user, or anyone else. So when we say AWS, so it could be a service probably, or the person which is dealing in the AWS from the AWS side, or maybe it could be a AWS service. So you can have a this bucket is going to be accessed by my AWS service or any other service. So we can have the name AWS. Instead of AWS, we can have the name service. So for example, I'm going to use this bucket using API gateway or Lambda. So I would say service dot lambda dot Amazon AWS.com. Similar way, if I say AWS, it means it could be any IAM person or any role who's going to control this bucket. So uh, when we say type AWS, it means the person is within AWS having access on AWS, and it's a valid IAM user. The third one is federated one, when you want to give access to the outer, you have a third party application which generate the session, or which grant your access. So in that case you have a federated web identity system. So maybe you can write it as a federated, and maybe you are have allowed using Google sign up, Facebook sign up, so you can have the name here like accounts.google.com for example. And canonical user is something that we will see here, or you created a user specific to the S3 bucket for that purpose, so you can have a canonical user as well. So there's a four type that you can deal with it. Here I have to define this one, the bucket policy. This is my document, and this is one. And one more thing to remember, this AWS IAM policy document is not only limited to the S3. So entire AWS, if you want to generate a valid uh, policy document, either you can use a file, you have created a JSON file and you can use it either this way, or you can use another way using this data block, which will help you to generate a valid IAM policy document that can be used to store the information with any services like S3, Lambda, whatever you want. So this is like a generic function to generate the policy. Let me reform, let me little bit format it. So this is done now. What I'll do is I'll just reload a bit this AWS consoles, and we'll go to the permission section now and see the bucket policy is same. The way of doing it now different. And if you go to the property section, then the bucket version is still disabled because we haven't enabled it. So what we will go to do it now as a last part of this session is we will enable this bucket versioning, and we will see some lifecycle management if you want to migrate it from one bucket class to the another bucket class. So let's start doing it. So I'll go and I'll say my version is enabled, and I have a life cycle where Okay, so there's a two things we need to see. So what I'll do is I'll just cut it here and paste it so we can have all the look together. So versioning, when we say version, it means your bucket is going to have all the objects as a version wise. So let's say it is a fresh one, then it could be the version 1. Once you upload new one, the previous one will be considered as a non-current version, and the latest one will be considered as a current version. So if you have enabled the versioning, there's a two terms, current version, non-current version. So if I disable this and start doing the life cycle, the way of doing it is gonna to remain same. So life cycle is just to change your storage class from one class to another class based on your requirement. For example, you have a bucket where you see or you think the resources inside that bucket is only good to have for 30 days, and after 30 days it should be migrated to the some other storage class, and if need be that can be asked to provide those information. For example, you have uploaded certain let's say certain resume to this bucket, and you want to keep those resume only available till 30 days so you can have it as a standard one, but after 30 days you want to consider it to be non or infrequent access, then you can automatically migrate this uh, the objects to the different storage class without changing or impacting the current setup. So I'm going to say my life cycle rule will be enabled, and actually it's not life cycle, it's a life cycle rule, because if I say life cycle then it will be a life cycle of your resource block where you can say what should happen, it's dependent upon, and so now it's life cycle rule, so I would say life cycle rule. I said enabled, you can enable or disabled. uh, True. Now since my versioning is enabled, then I have to say non current version expiration after a days, say 120 days. Non-current version transition, so there's a two term. Expiration, it means after this day, after this number of days, this bucket will be marked for deletions. And transition is from migration from one storage class to another storage class. So I can say it's a glacier, or maybe you can have anyone else after days 60. And again, non-current version transition storage class IA June days 30. So this is one way, and if you want to have this life cycle rule to be applied on specific set of objects, so you can have a prefix like temp or maybe logs or something like that. For our case, we are going to migrate in dry, then we can do it. So this is for the non-current version. You can have for similarly for the current version, but let's see for the non-current version only, because the current version should always be available here. So let's format it, and let's try to push to the git. Deleted now, and if you go here and if you refresh it, and we'll see the properties of object will have a version enabled, and we will have the life cycle rule as well. So this is now it is facing, what it says is the life cycle rule is named, it is at, it is enabled the entire bucket because we haven't added any prefix here. The transition will be to the standard IA, and this is for the current version, then expire it, and then for this one. So you can get the detail, but before that let's check it out whether the version is enabled or not. So version is enabled, and if you go to the management part, if you do this view details, then you see the current version actions will be object uploaded. Once you upload the object after 30 days, after the 30 days of object upload date, this will be moved to the standard IA, and after 120 days this object will be expired. This is for the current version. For the non-current version, the same thing, but it will go from 30 days to 60 days, then it will be permanently deleted. So what does it mean is, uh, let's say today you uploaded one document and tomorrow uploaded one documents. So the first one which got uploaded today will be considered as a non-current version. So what we have written here is in the lifecycle rule for the non-current version we have given this set of instruction, and for the current version we have given this such set of instruction. Okay, so this is how you can manage our entire, bucket, or you can have a specific blocks, set of blocks, or you can do this kind of a setting on a specific set of folders, and you can manage this. You can host your website or anything, or you can use the S3 bucket for any storage purposes. So this is it for the S3 bucket lab session. We have learned about how we can manage, how can deal with the S3 bucket now. In the next lecture, we are going to talk about Route 53 and the CloudFront along with the Lambda. Once all these four are completed, then we will have a good session using CI/CD, and then we will move on to the next topic like API gateway, ECS, many more services we will cover up. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe, and thanks for your time. Stay tuned. Thank you.